Happy Thursday, everybody. A busy day to go over yesterday in the Cactus League. Corbin Burnes made his debut, and some hitters are coming alive. Don't go anywhere. This is Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Dominic Cotroneo, along with Vinny Rattino. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. This is Locked On Brewers, your only daily podcast dedicated to the Midwest's favorite team. I said it, the Milwaukee Brewers. As we are your one-stop shop. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Dom_Cotroneo. He's at Vinny Rattino with 2 T's. It's linked in the show notes as well. He's a former big leaguer turned broadcaster. I'm a broadcaster turned podcaster. And Vinny, we're bringing you everything you need to know about the Cactus League as we get ready for Brewers opening day. Get this. Get ready to hear this, Vinny. We are 2 weeks away from today. How does that sound?
It's crazy is what it is, because I feel like 2 weeks ago or less, we were just kind of crying in our we were kind of crying that the season might not start. And now all of a sudden we're 2 weeks away. I couldn't be more excited, and I couldn't be more excited about this team. I'm really loving what I'm seeing in spring training. So I can't wait.
So we're going to go over our general impression so far of the first week of games in Cactus League play. We're going to talk about a certain slugger that might be showing some signs of a resurgence. His name is Keston Hiura. He had another great game last night. And then as far as moving forward for the final segment, we're going to talk about what's still to be figured out. What are the things that would maybe make a lot of fans happier with the way the team is currently constructed? Because it looks like things are pretty set as far as this is the personnel that you're going to be figuring out. Luis Urias is something we're going to touch on in that final segment as well, but that's what's to come in today's episode. But let's just start right off the bat here and get something out of the way. We're actually recording during last night's game right now. They're technically still playing. It's the top of the 9th. We started recording here, getting ready for the show in the 8th inning. It's 12-8 Reds. Spring training game results don't matter. It's in the top of the 9th. So if anything crazy in the middle of this game, maybe we'll bring it to you live in our instant reaction. But overall, Cactus League play, assuming the Brewers drop this game, they'll go to 3-2 in Cactus League play, 3-2-1. Overall, what have you liked and what have you disliked, or if there even is a dislike to have so far from camp?
So we're going to touch on them in the second segment, but I really like what I'm seeing from Keston. Obviously, that's a huge bonus, but let's wait till then to kind of touch on that. The other thing that I like is, and he hasn't done a ton, but I just like where Rowdy Tellez is, and I think he's going to be a key piece that really we haven't even really talked a ton about, and I feel like they haven't, the media hasn't really talked a ton about him either, and I do think he's going to be that huge piece in the middle of the lineup, especially, if Christian Yelich is still kind of struggling a little bit to get back to form from 2018, 2019. That remains to be seen whether or not he'll be able to do that. So I do think Rowdy Tellez is the guy that's going to have to pick up the slack, and I do like to see where he's at. I know he had a missile, he had a rocket shot off one of the better pitchers in the NL Central in Maley. So that was really encouraging to see from Rowdy.
And as far as my positives that I'm really liking, and it's a good reminder of what this team is, even though the designated hitter is coming to the National League, I love the versatility that this team has. And we're seeing it so far here in spring training with Luis Urias going down with his quad injury. And we'll get into that in the third segment too. But look, we've seen Pablo play third base. We've seen Jace Peterson pick it over at third base. A good reminder of how deep this outfield is and how many concoctions you can have as far as Yelich and Kane and Taylor and Renfroe and McCutchen. And now, even last night, Keston Hiura, Jace Peterson. And then at first base, you got Rowdy, you got Jace, you got Mike Brasso, who can play all over. There is so much versatility on this team. I'm really excited to see what Craig Counsell, what kind of levers that he can pull, as obviously we don't have double switches and pinch hits and things like that as much. But as somebody who's covered the Oakland A's and knows that Craig Counsell's biggest role model as a manager is Bob Melvin. And Bob Melvin, 3-time manager of the year, including in AL with the Oakland A's, known for using his bench in the American League. I really think Counsell is going to find a way to really keep his bench active throughout the season. You're not going to see the same 10 guys rolled out there every day. I think it's going to be a true 13, 14-man bench as far as things to come. I mean, we've talked about the advantage that Counsell is as a manager, and you slightly lose that losing the DH, but I think this is where he gains that advantage back.
And what he does really well, he does a great job of utilizing the data and the analytics part of understanding that players, when they're fresh, they play better. And they really deployed that theory last year with the 6-man rotation. You could see that the pitchers every 6th day, they were, or 7th day, I guess, they were super rested, right? And every to a man, everybody's stuff was super crisp. They were able to kind of maintain their velo deeper into the game. So I think you'll see a similar type of similar type of deployment of their position player group as well. So guys are going to be fresh all the time because, like you said, they have such depth and versatility from all these guys, and that's obviously by design. You don't pick up a Mike Brasso without understanding that he can, play multiple positions. Jace Peterson, same thing. So I mean, there's so many guys on this roster, on this team that can do that, and that is a huge advantage.
And the versatility goes into the pitching staff as well, specifically Aaron Ashby, who looks like to be your 6th starter right now. Put him in bubble wrap, as we say. But, I mean, even last night, Ashby comes in, 3 shutout innings, 3 perfect innings with 3 strikeouts. I mean, it's ridiculous that that's your 6th guy on this team. We've talked about it a million times, but enjoy it, man. This is something so rare in baseball to have starting pitchers 1 through 6 legitimate big league starters, and put them in bubble wrap. We're 2 weeks away. Let's go.
Yeah, you don't see that with a lot of groups, right? You don't see that with a lot of other starting pitching groups. I mean, I remember the days when the Brewers would have to have a ton of depth at the AAA level because they just really didn't know who their number 4 and 5 were going to be, and if they were going to be reliable pieces. And so you don't, I mean, this rotation's set and then some. I mean, put them in bubble wrap and etch them into the lineup card in granite, right? These guys aren't going anywhere as long as they're healthy. And again, I remember very recently when that was not the case for the Milwaukee Brewers. Maybe they had 1 or 2 guys that were solid, rock solid, starting rotation options, but they definitely needed a ton of guys in AAA to be shuttled back and forth for that 4th and 5th spot. So definitely an advantage again to have a guy like Aaron Ashby be your number 6. So good luck the rest of the teams in the National League and the American League. So definitely spoiled with starting pitching options.
Couple of quick headlines here before we move on to our next segment. Let's first talk about the upcoming pitching rotation for Cactus League play. If you are down here in Phoenix, I'm still in Phoenix, obviously. You're back home in Milwaukee. You got Brandon Woodruff pitching today at home against the homestanding Diamondbacks at American Family Fields in Phoenix. That game's at 3:10 Central, 1:10 Arizona time. It's also available on Bally Sports Wisconsin with Jeff Levering, Bill Schroeder, and Sophia Minard on the call. Also, Uke's down here, by the way. Uke was on the air this week, so that's good to see Uke again. And then Friday, over in Mesa at Hohokam, the A's will be hosting the Brewers, and Freddie Peralta will make his 2nd start of the spring going up against Cole Irvin of the A's. So that's the next couple of days. And then Saturday, they're back at home against the Mariners with Adrian Hauser getting the start. So now, I mean, you've already seen some cuts made in spring training. We're getting into the nitty-gritty as far as the guys. I mean, this roster is pretty set. There's not much really truly to figure out as far as position players go. Ethan Small's got his work in, and the reason why you see these cuts at this time is because there's just not enough innings for these guys to get into the game now. They got to make sure the big leaguers get their reps as camp really is winding down. There's only 12 more days of camp, which is just a shocking sentence to say. But we're going to talk about another guy in camp with Keston Hiura. Before we do that, we got to tell you about our friends at BetOnline. This time of year, college basketball's tournament is full swing. From the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season as well. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, Vinny, let's talk about Keston Hiura. We've talked to him about a couple of times so far, but Last night, another home run, and it comes on an 0-2 pitch, by the way, his second homer of the spring. Both of his homers have gone to the opposite field so far here in the Cactus League. He went 2 for 3, also drove in another run. Look, Keston is off to a great start in spring training. I know it's just spring training. Talk to me when the calendar turns and things like that, but look, there's actual adjustments here, and you, the Vinny Rottino Baseball Academy, has some thoughts about his swing.
I do. Yes, I love where he's at. He simplified that toe tap. He totally eliminated that toe tap back, then to the big leg kick, and he's just simplified stuff. So at times in baseball, you just need to throw out everything and just make it simple. Use your hands. He has some of the most electric hands that I have ever seen, and if you don't believe me, just go stand next to him when he's taking batting practice or something. Go down to that first row at AmFam Field after he's done with batting practice. He's only like 5'9", 5'10". He's not that big of a guy, and he hits the ball a mile, and his hands are absolutely electric. So go ahead, keep it simple. He went completely away from that toe tap back, then to the leg kick, just to a leg kick now. He worked really, really hard in the offseason at trying to keep things simple, at just making this physical adjustment, but also making the mental adjustment as well. You can sense that he's a lot more confident. I get it. It's spring training. But here's the thing. Once players lose confidence like he did last year, we all saw it, it's hard to get it back. Now, once you get it back, it's a little bit easier to keep it now because you know what it feels like to be confident again. And it sounds kind of weird and not intuitive, but it's just how it goes in baseball. You can lose a confidence, and it's very difficult to get it back. Sometimes you just need the season to be over, clear it, regain that confidence with some early results, and he's getting that. And all of a sudden, that confidence sticks around for a full season and maybe for the rest of your career, and you kind of went through a really bad patch that he went through last year, and it was a learning experience, a growth experience for him, and that's hopefully what we're seeing from Keston.
And the other thing, we've talked about it before the Andrew McCutchen trade of saying the DH job is Keston's to lose. Now they go out and get Andrew McCutchen, and the thought is, well, Kutch would be your DH then on the games that he's not playing left field, and that means someone's going to be the odd man out, a guy that you went out and acquired in Mike Brasso or Keston Hiura, who needs to prove his way onto the team. And quite frankly, Keston's doing his job. He's holding up his end of the deal and trying to prove that he belongs on this team. It's exactly what you want to see. Competition breeds success, and this is exactly what any front office team would want to see.
Yeah, and I think what you'll end up seeing is something creative by Counsell if Keston continues to hit like this, where Keston's going to go ahead and get a bunch of games at DH, or maybe spell Christian Yelich in left field, or spell Hunter Renfroe in right field, perhaps a game or two. They'll find a way to get him in the lineup if he's hitting like this. And if he's not, you know what? Then you go back down to AAA and you solidify these results and you stay super confident down there until you wait until it's your opportunity to play. But yeah, they're going to find a way and they'll find some sort of solution to this. But it'll be a good problem to have if this is Keston Hiura for the rest of his tenure with the Brewers.
It's one thing worth noting if you want to get really deep in the weeds is that Keston has one more option remaining,
right,
whereas Mike Brasso has 2 more option years remaining. So something to keep in mind if it does come down to a roster crunch, because that's assuming, and we can get into the roster here in just a second, that's assuming you carry a backup catcher, you carry Jace Peterson, you carry Tyrone Taylor, and then for your 4th man on the bench, you have to decide between Brasso and Hiura. However, the news coming out on Tuesday that the rosters will be expanded for the first month of the season instead of 26 to 28. Now, there is no roster limit on the 28-man roster, meaning you don't have to have 13 or 14 pitchers. You can have 15 pitchers and a 13-man position players, but come May 1st, or May 2nd, I should say, come May 2nd, you have to go back to the 26-man roster, and your pitcher limit is 13. So that's another added wrinkle here coming out of camp. And as we've said all offseason, the camp you break with on opening day is almost never the camp you have come the last day of the season. And This year could be a great example of it, given, or may not be a great example of it, given how stagnant the roster seems to be, but you never really know.
Well, how about last year? What was it? They had a record number of moves, did they not? A record number of players play on the roster just because they were hit by the injury bug, if you remember, in the first few months of the season. So I remember when I was in spring training, Doug Melvin used to tell us all, hey, look around the room. When there was like 70 guys in camp, he would say, look around the room. We're going to need most of you guys this year because we don't play with 25 guys. And we don't even play with 40 guys during the season. So, yeah, they're going to have a ton of dudes that they're going to have to use. But at the end of the day, the Brewers do a great job of shuffling guys around and putting a really good product out on the field, a winning product. So that's what we can look forward to.
Just a reminder that last year, opening day, Keston Hiura was playing first base. You had Travis Shaw playing third base. Then in the second game, you had Arcia as the starting shortstop. It just changed in the blink of an eye. Even Brad Boxberger didn't make the team on opening day. You know, you just don't know what's going to happen. And it's good to have depth, and that's certainly something the Brewers have to their advantage. Another thing, as far as the rule changes go, and I'm going a little off script here before we go to our final segment, the fact that the placed runner is back for extra innings. I don't know if you caught that and
love
what your immediate takeaway. So there you go. You love it. I love it too. Yeah. The thing that worries me is that it's only in place as of now for this season. It's not part of the CBA. So maybe there's a chance that it goes away next year. I personally would hate that. I could see the middle ground, though, of saying, hey, let's play traditional baseball for the 10th and the 11th innings. And then for the 12th inning on, let's put that extra man on. I could see that, but I am all in favor of the placed runner.
I love the placed runner. I think everyone loves the placed runner. It adds an element of kind of, entertainment right away. There's a chance that you score runs right away with a base hit. There's some strategy involved. If you're hitting in the top, if you're the visitor hitting in the top, do you bunt the guy over? Do you kind of have your hitter kind of sacrifice himself and get that runner over to third base? Does that really help? Because you don't want to necessarily give up an out right there because the home team will then just play for one run as well. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't want to see, we talked about this before, I don't want to see 20-inning baseball games. I played in a 21-inning baseball game once. It was awful. It takes like 2 weeks to get your mind right, let alone your body back to normal after something like that. So, I love the Ghost Runner. I hope they keep it forever.
Well, it's not a ghost. It's a real person out there. It's not Little League backyard baseball, But yes, I'm sure there's going to be people in our mention saying, how could you have this? This is blasphemous. This is the worst thing to happen. Yeah. It's a good thing. I like it, man. It's fun. And even Craig Counsell said earlier this week in his manager meetings with the media saying, if there's a chance that we have to shorten games and to make the product better, we have to explore it. And kudos to baseball to going out to exploring it. And I think he's in favor of it too. So it's pretty fun.
Is there a similar? That's a great point by Counts. Is there a similar rule in other sports that?
Well, think about it. Like for sports where scoring is a premium, right? Hockey and soccer, that the overtime rule is modified to an extent with soccer. Soccer, you play a full another half pretty much, and then go to penalty kicks. But hockey, you got the 3-on-3 before you get to the shootout, so they modify the game to try to entice scoring. But basketball, you don't need to because there is so much scoring for that extra 5 minutes. For football, well, we can talk about the football overtime rules.
They modified that, though. They modified the overtime.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. They went from, first score wins to, well, if you get a field goal, the other team gets a chance, but if you score a touchdown, the game's over. Yeah. I get that. But the point is that baseball didn't modify its overtime. So the chance that you can change something to its extra time, its extra innings, its overtime, that I'm all for it. Get a result. That's what the whole point of extra innings are, to get a result as quickly as possible, and that's why I'm all for it. So I think it'll have its critics will come around.
And last point, in Japan they play 12 innings, I think 11 or 12 innings, and then if it's still tied, you end in a tie. I don't like that.
I hate that.
So I love that Ghost Runner rule. So hopefully they keep it. Whoever thought of that is brilliant.
Well, we've had it in the minors. We had it in the minors before it came to the big leagues, and we loved it in the minors, man. It was awesome. And in 2018 is the first year that we had it. So pretty fun. Pretty fun. We're going to get to our final segment. Before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Our final segment, before we get into it, though, I didn't really talk about Corbin Burnes. There's not much to talk about from last night. I mean, 5 runs, 5 hits, 2 homers allowed, but also 5 strikeouts. Look, it was his first action in Cactus League play. It's spring training, and I know we go here and sing Keston Hiura's praises even though it's spring training, but at the same time, it's spring training. You know, he's probably working on one pitch. The cutter was cutting. He still got 5 strikeouts, but it's spring training. Don't put too much stock into it.
He looked for me. He looked absolutely filthy. Where he kind of messed up, couple pitches left out over the plate. Command was off a little bit on a couple of batters. So yeah, I mean it snowballed on him a little bit. Pedro Severino missed a ball, a pass ball. So I mean, like stuff. Again, it's spring training. You got a catcher back there that's never caught you in live game action. So that's in and of itself a feat that Severino was able to do that. I thought Severino looked good, by the way, back there too. So just a little aside. Just in general, his hands look really, really good. Look different from what I saw last year on video. So I'll maybe do a breakdown on him at some point. But yeah, Burnes looked absolutely. His stuff again in a vacuum looked absolutely filthy, as usual. So that is really what you want to see from Burnes in a spring training outing.
I love it. So he's going to get at least one more appearance, you would figure. I wonder when Craig Counsell is going to announce an opening day starter. He probably won't do it till the week of, but it's really between Woodruff and Burnes at this point because Woodruff's pitching today. But how do you not give it to the Cy Young, but you also give it to your stalwart and how you want to line things up with off days?
Man, you got to give it to Burnes, right? Just because Burnes started game 1 of the playoffs too. Because I actually thought last year heading into the playoffs, I'm like, who's Counsell going to give the ball to game 1? I thought he was going to. There was a part of me that thought he was going to give it to Woodruff just because he was the veteran. He's been there, done that in the playoffs, and I was just slightly surprised that it was kind of like a hands down Burnes type of a feel when I heard him talk about who was going to get the ball in game 1 against the Braves. And rightfully so. Burnes was a Cy Young. But I would imagine since he got it for the playoffs that he would also be the opening day starter. And he was the Cy Young. So, and I'm sure Woodruff would be fine with that, kind of passing the torch off to Burnes. But we'll see what happens. Leaning 80% Corbin Burnes gets the ball.
I agree. But let's talk about overall as we wrap up this episode. What is still to be figured out? We learned that Luis Urias dodged a bullet with his quad injury, that it doesn't seem to be serious. However, it sounds like opening day is in doubt for him in that 2 weeks minimum, probably more like 3 weeks to even get back to baseball activity. So this does a lot for the depth of this team. The 28-man roster will certainly help cover up that depth. But so far, if you had to make a prediction right now, who's the opening day third baseman for the Brewers, assuming Urias is not going to be able to do it, who would you think it would be?
I got to say Jace Peterson. I think he's earned that opportunity from the season that he had last year. So that's my call. I think Jace Peterson. And he looks like the exact same guy from last year. Looks like the adjustments that he made at the plate have kind of taken hold. And so I think he's ready and poised to have a similar type of season.
I agree with Jace. I wouldn't sleep on the fact that Pablo Reyes could make this roster and then be the first guy optioned down when Urias does return. Because Pablo has played, in this team now last season, coming off the bench and being that versatile infielder when Adames got hurt and trying to fill things in on the infield when Wong got hurt as well. So that's just someone to keep in mind that could be eligible too. But I agree with you that it would be Jace at third base. And I know we've talked about this bullpen being pretty set, but it doesn't seem like there's much to figure out there. But is there anything, there really isn't much to talk about. It's just weird to talk about, so many teams have so much to figure out as far as who's starting when and what roles are the bullpen's going to be. Like, it's just kind of weird to sit back and be like, well, he's going to be there and he's going to be there. I just don't know how to react to it, right?
Yeah, we don't have much to figure out. I do think there is a question mark, obviously, with the third base situation. Then also, I do think there's a question mark. Not necessarily a question mark. I think Pedro Severino looks really, really good. I just think he has big shoes to fill in terms of defensively and that staff leader that Manny Pena was. The guys love throwing to him. He's just going to have to gain that trust. I think he will in time. And then the other question mark is that 6-man rotation. So obviously Aaron Ashby is the guy. I'm just curious whether or not, I'm curious how they're going to deploy that. If it's just going to be strictly on days off, and then if there is a situation where you got an extra day off, then does Ashby not pitch? Does he go to the bullpen? Does he get optioned down? I don't know. I think that's a little bit more tricky of a situation than you and I think, right? Because you don't want to really be messing with Ashby's confidence at the big league level. You don't want to really, kind of just treat him like, a guy that can be optioned down in and out of the rotation type of thing. So just keep an eye on that. I think we need to revisit this again once we get closer to spring training being over. I'm curious to get your take on that piece.
Well, we looking at the schedule. The Brewers open up with 14 in a row before their first off day, assuming no rainouts or any weather-related things, because they are playing all outdoor opponents for their road games between the Cubs and the Orioles before they return home for the Cardinals and the Pirates. So 14 straight days, and if you're going to say you're going to go with 6, that means your 6-man is going to make 2 starts in this stretch before your first off day. Then you have 10 straight days with the game. You remember you have that make-up game against the Giants from the original schedule, what was originally an off day on April 25th. So once again, you'll need 1 start from your 6th man, even though you have that off day before in May you start getting more off days. So with the extra space on the roster, I would be shocked if Counsell doesn't break camp with all 6 guys and with the intent of Ashby being in the rotation. And then you figure out what you want to do with him come May. Maybe a guy needs to be put on the shelf for a few days. I mean, there's so much that could happen between now and the end of May, because you have 3 off days in the month of May before you go on a 3-city road trip at the end of that month between San Diego, St. Louis, and back down to Chicago. So there's a lot to figure out before you even need a 6th starter again. But to break camp, it certainly makes sense to use him.
And that's a great point. A lot of these things kind of work themselves out naturally, and they just get figured out because of the way guys are performing. So that is a really good point. I guess then one thing that we could think about and talk about with this team as far as a question mark is, okay, so last year the Brewers deployed Alec Bettinger, they deployed Zach Godley. Help me out on other starters that had to start a game. I think those were maybe the only 2. So depth in AAA. I know Jason Alexander looked pretty decent throwing strikes, and he has that sinker. I don't know if he's an option for depth. Again, hopefully you don't need any depth starters at AAA, but this is something that every team ends up needing. Again, Brewers used a couple of guys that I just mentioned that didn't really quite work out that well. So, that's something to talk about at least.
Yeah, those are the main 2. And then you're still trying to fill the void of Brett Anderson. Obviously, he's still unsigned as a free agent. But that's the whole point of the 6-man rotation, condensed schedules, and all that fun stuff. This was a fun episode. Tomorrow, we're back with another recap of the Diamondbacks and the Brewers. Also, our Future Friday, MLB Pipeline dropped its new top 30 prospect list for the Brewers, and we'll be going over that, our impressions, what we like, what we didn't like out of that. And we'll be getting ready for another week of baseball the following week. And it's been a whole lot of fun to look at and figure things out. Also, quick shout out, old friend Stephen Vogt re-signing with the Oakland A's, big league deal, going back to where his, fan love really began with the I Believe in Stephen Vogt. I love Stephen Vogt personally. He's a great dude. Did you get the chance to play with Voter at all?
I never did, but I scouted him. Now, I got to tell a really quick Stephen Vogt story. So I was scouting for the Texas Rangers, as everybody knows, and I was on the Appleton Timber Rattlers. Meaning when I was scouting the Timber Rattlers. I had to write a report on every single player. Stephen Vogt was doing a rehab start down there. Okay, so when you do a rehab start, if you're an established big leaguer, you play 3-4 innings, you take it into the clubhouse, you shower, you order food for the minor leaguers, and then you stick around in your street clothes in the clubhouse. Stephen Vogt left the game, got taken out of the game after a couple of at-bats, stayed in his cleats the entire game, gave everyone fist bumps after they scored a run, after they came off every inning, was first guy out there in the handshake line at the end of the game. This guy was unbelievable. he is, ever since then, I've loved him. And so I've kind of followed him, and I'm glad to see that he's still playing. He's still got something left in the tank. He was pretty good last year. And so I'm glad to see him sign.
So we wish him all the best. He'll be in A's camp, and perhaps we see him tomorrow, since the A's and the Brewers face each other in Mesa. He's Vinny Rottino. I'm Dominic Cotroneo. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and subscribe on our YouTube page as well. Vinny, thanks as always, my friend, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. Until then, keep on swinging.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.